Welcome back. So, first video's up on the brakes and where I went wrong with that side. I also messed up on the right hand side, which due to having computer issues, I seem to have lost the video for. I've got a clip of me rectifying the issue, so I figured the best way is just to explain what I did wrong. Like I've said all along, I'm not professional, so I do make mistakes, and I want other people to learn from those mistakes so they don't make the same thing. Alright, so left hand side in video one, part one, what you seen was I forced the brass cover off the brakes, and what did that do? Well, that bent it out of shape, and that basically protects the back end of the pads and keeps all the crap off. When I realised what I'd done, I then took it all off again and rectified it, and as you can see now, there's no movement at all, just as it should be. So to avoid that in future, what you do is you take the pins off, take the little pin out, turn them around so they fit into these little gaps, slide the little pins out, and then the big pins come out, and then the brass cover comes off. Easy. So I realised that before I got round to the other side. So what was the mistake on the other side? Wow, that was the most schoolboy mistake of it all, really. What I did was took everything out, cleaned everything as I'd done on the other side, but when I was bleeding it, I left the bleed nipple open, and all the fluid from the master cylinder, while I wasn't concentrating and I was messing around cleaning the brake pads and stuff up, slowly drained through gravity out the back end of the brakes. And by the time I had noticed, the master cylinder reservoir was dry and I could just see the top of the fluid. So I was fairly confident all the main bulk of the dirty brake fluid was out of the caliper. So then what I did is I reverse bled the brakes, which is basically using a syringe and forcing fluid back through from the caliper back through to the master cylinder. Now on part one, you may have seen where I said don't do this if you have ABS, and that's because any little particles that are stuck in the caliper, which is the dirtiest of the brake fluid, might clog up your ABS system. But like I've just said, I was pretty sure at that point most of the brake fluid out of the caliper was out and in the jam jar. So it's the easiest way to make sure that you haven't got any air gaps. So I forced it all back through, so it was coming through to the reservoir, and then I topped the reservoir up. That still left me with no brakes, so then what I had to do was just here, and the actual master cylinder itself is just bleed through a little bit of brake fluid. It didn't take a lot at all, and probably the easiest part on the brakes to bleed, and I bled it through there. And what I'll probably do is the brakes work fine. I rode the bike yesterday, everything's fine, but what I'll probably do is I'll give them another bleed through in a couple of weeks, just to make sure I did get all the air out. But again, it's one of those, just don't work if you're not in the right frame of mind. So what I'll do now is I'll show you a quick clip of me doing a reverse bleed on the brakes, and then we'll crack on with the back brakes. Okay then, rear brakes. Hopefully this goes a lot simpler than the back brakes, because that was hopefully this goes a lot simpler than the front brakes, because that was a nightmare. Okay, Rear brakes on it, fairly simple. Got two locking clips here with a locking pin that slides out towards the wheel. So just be careful of your spokes when you're pulling that through, don't be spinning the wheel. All we're going to do is the same thing again, just going to take the pressure off the piston through the bleed nipple, tightening it up this time when we remove the pads, and then we'll drain the master cylinder, or sorry, we'll drain the reservoir, and then we'll just bleed through. Right. So, two clips. Oh. Oh. Leave the main pin in place till we take the pressure off the piston. The pads on here will need doing soon, I know that anyway. So we'll just take them out, give them a quick clean off, and then put them back in. But let's just have a look at the fluid what I've taken out. Obviously this has come out, and this is what's gone in. Clearly time for a change. I mean, how much loss do you get through that? There's going to be some. It's just not worth the risk for 20 minutes if you don't mess it up. Work to just bleed the brakes through. It's worth doing. It's just one of those things. It's all done now. Out tomorrow on the bike, so I'll let you know if there's any issues. Cheers for watching.